6 years since this football club lifted a trophy. And before you say anything, yes, the FA Cup counted. Of course it counted. But you know as well as I do that winning at an empty Wembley during a pandemic with no fans in the stadium, with no one to share that moment with, it felt real, but it also felt distant, like something that happened in a dream rather than something you actually lived. Sunday is different. I will be honest with you. I watched the semi-final second leg against Chelsea from my sofa, and when that final whistle went, the first thing I felt was not celebration. It was this quiet, almost cautious exhale, like I did not want to jinx it by getting too excited too early. And I think most Arsenal fans will recognise that feeling, that instinct to protect yourself from the hope before it becomes real. And then about 30 seconds later, it hit me. We are going to Wembley against City in a final. And that feeling, that specific mix of excitement and fear that only Arsenal supporters truly understand, that is exactly what this video is about. There is one thing in particular I want to get to later in this video. One detail about this final that I think most people are completely underestimating. And when we get there, I think it will change how you see Sunday's match. But first, let us build the full picture. Sunday is 90,000 people. Sunday is Wembley at full noise. Sunday is the full weight of what it means to be an Arsenal supporter in 2026. All of the hope, all of the frustration, all of the near misses, all of those moments where we thought this was the year and then watched it slip away. All of it comes to a head at 4:30 in the afternoon against Manchester City in the Carabao Cup final. And here is the thing that I keep coming back to. Here is the thing that I think separates this moment from every other big moment under Mikel Arteta. We are going into this final as the better team, not on paper, not in theory, in actual football reality. We are 9 points clear at the top of the Premier League. We are through to the Champions League quarter-finals after beating Bayer Leverkusen European finalists last season across 2 professional-controlled legs. We are on a 14-game unbeaten run, and we are doing all of this while Martin Odegaard has been injured, while Jurriën Timber has been injured, while Mikel Merino had his season ended in January. The evidence is everywhere. This Arsenal is built differently. And I think most of us feel that not as wishful thinking, but as something we have actually watched develop over the course of this season. So what does that actually tell us going into Sunday? It tells us that this is not a squad riding emotion to a final. This is a squad that has earned it through consistent performance under pressure. Sunday is the opportunity to prove it on the biggest domestic stage available. Keep that word in mind. Pressure, because it becomes the central theme of everything we are going to discuss today. So today I want to work through this properly. I want to talk about what I think actually decides this final. I want to get into the debates that I know every Arsenal fan is having right now. I want to give you my honest read on where this goes. And I want to have a conversation about what Sunday means beyond the trophy itself, because I think it means more than people are currently saying. Let us get into it. First, let me just be straight with you about the facts going into this weekend, because I think it matters to ground everything in reality before we get into the bigger discussion. And there is one fact in particular, one that barely anyone is talking about, that we will come back to shortly. Because once you see it clearly, it reframes the entire match. Arsenal go into Sunday on that 14-game unbeaten run. 11 wins, 3 draws. The last defeat was the Manchester United loss back in January. And since then, this team has been on a completely different level. 4-0 at Leeds, 3-0 against Sunderland, 2-1 against Chelsea in the league, 1-0 at Brighton, 4-1 at Tottenham, 2-0 against Everton last weekend, and in Europe, drawing 1-1 away at Leverkusen, and then winning 2-0 at home to go through. That is not a team running hot on luck. That is a team that has found a way to win matches in different ways, scoring freely when they need to, controlling games when they need to, defending solidly when they need to. That versatility is new. That is the growth. And I think many of us as Arsenal supporters have noticed it, even if we have not quite put it into words until now. We have watched this team solve problems this season that previous squads would have been beaten by. City's reality is different. And I want to be fair here, because I think the media has slightly overdone the crisis narrative around City. They are second in the Premier League. They are in an FA Cup quarter-final. They are not a broken club, but their form has been unconvincing. 1 win in their last 5 matches across all competitions, 2 draws and 2 defeats in that run, and the Champions League exit to Real Madrid, 5-1 on aggregate, was genuinely difficult to watch, even as an Arsenal fan, because you could see a City team that was not functioning at anywhere near its best level. Some of you will disagree here, and I understand that. There is a real argument that City in a one-off final is an entirely different animal to City across a run of league and European fixtures. Guardiola has consistently shown the ability to lift his squad for cup finals specifically, I am not dismissing that, but the form gap going into Sunday is real, and pretending it is not there does not help us understand the match honestly. So that is the reality going into Sunday. Arsenal in the form of their season. City inconsistent, but still capable of producing moments. And this is where Arsenal's situation becomes clearer, because the form gap is not marginal. It is significant, and that matters in a final where margins are everything. Now, before we go any further, there is something about City's squad situation going into this final that I think fundamentally changes the tactical picture. And this is the detail I mentioned at the start. We will get there in a moment. But first, the injury picture, because it connects directly. Mikel Merino is out for the season. We know that has been confirmed. Odegaard and Timber are both major doubts, both having missed recent matches. Arteta has said he is hopeful on both, but neither is confirmed. That uncertainty is the single biggest question going into this final. On City's side, Josko Gvardiol is out with a tibial fracture and will not be back for another month. And Mark Guehi, who City signed specifically to address their defensive vulnerabilities, is cup-tied. He joined after the registration deadline for this competition and simply cannot play on Sunday. So both teams are going into this final without key defensive players. The difference is that Arsenal's injuries are primarily in attack and midfield creation, positions that affect how they build, while City's absences are in defence, positions that affect how they protect. That distinction matters enormously, and when we get to the tactical section, you will see exactly why it could be the deciding factor on Sunday. Now, here is the question that I think this whole final really comes down to, and it is not the question most people are asking. Most people are asking whether Guardiola's Carabao Cup record gives City an automatic advantage. Most people are asking whether Arsenal can handle the occasion. Most people are asking about the goalkeeper situation. All valid questions, but the real question underneath all of those is this. Is this an Arsenal squad that wins finals, or is this still an Arsenal squad that gets close? Before I answer that, and I do have a clear answer, there is an uncomfortable fact we need to confront first, because it surprised me when I sat with it properly, and I think it will surprise some of you too. Arsenal have been runners-up in the Carabao Cup final more times than any other club in the history of the competition. 6 times more than anyone. This specific trophy, this specific competition, it has not been kind to us historically. And I will be honest, this is a detail that genuinely unsettled me when I sat down and thought about it properly this week. I went into my preparation assuming the historical record in this competition would be fairly even between two clubs of this size. Looking at the actual numbers shifted my thinking. That is the kind of context that does not make the back pages, but that matters when you are genuinely trying to understand what Sunday involves. Now, does that mean Sunday goes the same way? Absolutely not. Past patterns do not determine future results, but I think it is worth acknowledging because it is exactly the kind of thing that gives City belief, when City need belief most. They have won this competition 8 times. Guardiola alone has won it more than any manager who has ever touched it. When they walk out at Wembley on Sunday, this environment feels familiar to them in a way it does not for most of this Arsenal squad. But here is where my thinking shifted back, and this is the part I want you to stay with, because it is the real answer to the question I just asked. I kept asking myself, what actually makes this Arsenal different from previous Arsenal squads in big moments? And the answer is not what I expected. It is not Gyökeres. It is not even. It is not even the 9-point lead in the league. It is the Leverkusen second leg. Think about what Arsenal did in that match. They did not go out and try to be spectacular. They did not try to make a statement. They went to the Emirates, they controlled a Champions League tie against a team that had been in the European final the previous season, and they won it 2-0 in a way that felt almost quiet. Calm, assured, like they already knew the outcome before it happened. Most Arsenal supporters watching that night were still holding their breath in the second half. The team was not, and I think many of us felt that difference in real time, that gap between what we were feeling in our living rooms and what the players were projecting on the pitch. That gap tells you everything about where this squad's mentality is right now. That is what has changed about this Arsenal. Previous versions of this team, the 2022-23 squad, the 2023-24 squad, would have tried to win big games by running at them with emotion. This version wins by understanding them, and I think that is why Sunday is genuinely different. I know some of you will say we have been here before with this kind of thinking, and you are not wrong to hold that caution. But the evidence behind this feeling is stronger than it has ever been. And now comes the tactical part, because this is where the match actually gets decided. Let me talk tactics now, because there are 3 things I think will actually decide this final. And I want to keep this simple, because I think football is always best explained simply. But first, we need to understand something about City's defensive situation going into Sunday. because this is the detail I promised at the start of the video, and once you see it clearly, the rest of the tactical picture clicks into place. The first factor, and the one I think is most underappreciated by almost everyone covering this final, is Arsenal's set-piece threat against City's specific defensive setup on Sunday. Here is why this matters. Arsenal have scored 16 Premier League goals from corners this season. 16. That equals the all-time record for a single Premier League season. They are the most dangerous set-piece team in Europe right now, and it is not even a close competition. Declan Rice delivers, Gabriel attacks, Saliba attacks. Arsenal have coded routines that create specific movements and angles, and they have been executing them all season against every team in England. Now put that alongside City's defensive situation on Sunday. Guardiola is out, one of their best aerial defenders, one of the players who give City's backline its physicality and presence, not there. Guehi is cup-tied, the centre-back they signed specifically to address gaps in their squad, also not there. City will be defending corners with a backline that is missing two of the players Guardiola would most want in those moments. Honestly, when I map these two facts side by side, this was the moment my view of the final shifted most significantly. This stops being a general advantage and becomes a specific structural matchup that Arsenal can actively exploit. If Declan Rice gets 4 or 5 clean corner deliveries on Sunday, and he will, the probability of Arsenal scoring at least once from a set piece is genuinely high. That is not just a stat, that is a weapon meeting a vulnerability. And I think this is the single most underappreciated tactical factor in this entire final, one that most of the mainstream coverage has not given the attention it deserves. Keep that picture in mind as we go through the next two factors, because they connect. The second thing that decides Sunday is Declan Rice himself, not just his delivery. Rice does 3 jobs in every Arsenal match, and I want to explain what those jobs are, because I think fans sometimes see him and think brilliant player, great in the big moments, without fully understanding what he is doing behind the scenes. He screens the defence, he positions himself between the City attackers and the Arsenal backline, and he reads where the danger is coming from before it arrives. He covers for the fullbacks when they push forward, and Arsenal's fullbacks push forward constantly, so Rice's positioning is what stops City from exploiting the spaces they leave, and he delivers set pieces, all 3 simultaneously. What that means for Sunday is simple. If Rice wins his individual battle in the middle of the pitch, if he controls the tempo, protects the defence and delivers from corners, Arsenal control the match. If City find ways to consistently bypass him, they will find gaps. Most viewers will be watching Haaland and Saka and Eze on Sunday. The match might actually be decided by what Rice does in the spaces between those names. That is the individual battle I will be watching most closely, and it leads directly to the third factor. The third factor is how Arsenal stop City feeding Haaland, and this is where everything either holds together or falls apart for Arsenal. I want to be honest about this because Haaland is one of the most dangerous players in world football, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. He is fit, he is available, he will start on Sunday, and if City get him the ball in the right areas, he can change a match with one moment. I know many Arsenal fans go into this game slightly dismissing Haaland's threat because of how well Saliba and Gabriel have handled him before, and I understand that instinct, but I think we need to respect what he is capable of in a one-off final. But here is the interesting part, and this is where the recent evidence becomes really important. The evidence from recent Arsenal versus City matches tells us something specific about how Haaland operates against this defence. He has not dominated their backline. Saliba and Gabriel are the best central defensive partnership in the Premier League this season, and they defend as a unit rather than as individuals. They do not commit early, they do not give Haaland space to run into. They make him earn every touch, and they deal with the aerial threat together. Haaland needs service, he needs space, and he needs volume. City will try to get Rodri and Bernardo Silva into positions where they can feed him early. Arsenal's press is designed to prevent exactly that, to force City's midfield backwards rather than allowing them to turn forward. If Arsenal's press works, Haaland gets isolated. If City's midfield can play through the press, he becomes a genuine danger. That is the central tactical battle of this final. And it is one that neither side can fully control from the first whistle. It will shift and evolve as the match develops. And this leads us to the part of the conversation I think is most important of all. Now, here is the thing about City's last 6 meetings with Arsenal that I think is being slightly misrepresented in the broader conversation. And before I get into the debate sections, I want to address this clearly because it changes how we should frame Sunday. The popular narrative is that Arsenal have City figured out, that the balance of power in this rivalry has fully shifted, that Arteta has overtaken Guardiola. And I understand why that narrative exists, because the last 6 meetings, 6 consecutive matches in which City have not beaten Arsenal, is a significant run. As Arsenal supporters, it feels significant. We have lived those results. We remember when winning at the Etihad felt like an event rather than an expectation. But here is where I would push back slightly, and some of you will disagree with me here. Guardiola still leads the overall head-to-head record, 8 wins to 4. The full picture is more complicated than the recent run suggests. What the last 6 meetings actually show is that Arteta has found structural ways to make City uncomfortable, not that he has solved Guardiola permanently. There is a difference between having a pattern that has worked and having a definitive answer, and that distinction is important going into Sunday. Now, this leads to an important question. What is the actual tactical shift underneath that 6-match run? Because I do not think it is just momentum or confidence. It is structural. And understanding that structure is what tells us whether Sunday continues the pattern or breaks it. A City used to be able to impose their rhythm on Arsenal, and Arsenal would eventually crack under that pressure. That is not happening anymore. Arsenal now have their own rhythm, and they impose it. The matches feel different, more controlled from Arsenal's perspective, more reactive from City's. Arteta has built a system that specifically limits what City want to do. Reduce the midfield space Rodri wants to operate in. Press the defensive line to limit Haaland's service. Exploit set pieces against City's zonal marking. City have not found a consistent answer to it. Why does this keep happening in big games between these two sides? I think it is because Arteta has genuinely changed the tactical identity of this club in a way that specifically counters how Guardiola wants to play. That is not accidental. That is deliberate construction over multiple transfer windows. Until Sunday proves otherwise, that is the most honest reading of where this rivalry stands. But now let us get into the debates, because this is where it gets interesting. Right, the debates, because I know these are the conversations you are all having right now and I want to get into them. And I also know that many of us as Arsenal supporters have been going back and forth on these all week without landing anywhere definitive, which is actually a sign that they are genuinely close calls rather than obvious decisions. The goalkeeper question. Kepa or Raya? And I want to give you my honest position on this, but first hear both sides, because the case for each is stronger than the headlines suggest. The case for keeping Kepa is straightforward. He has started every Carabao Cup match this season. He has done his job. He has not been a problem. There is an argument for continuity for keeping the same goalkeeper who has been part of this cup run from the beginning and trusting that familiarity in the biggest match. Some of the best managers in football, including Guardiola himself, have used separate cup goalkeepers and honoured that commitment in finals. The case for Raya is also straightforward. This is Wembley. This is 90,000 people. This is a final against Manchester City. At the highest stakes, you want your best players available. And David Raya, in terms of pure goalkeeping quality, is one of the best in the Premier League. His shot stopping, his distribution, his ability to handle pressure, all of it is at a higher level than Kepa. I know many Arsenal fans feel strongly that Raya has to start on Sunday, regardless of what has come before in this competition. That is a completely understandable position. Here is where I land on this. I think Arteta keeps Kepa, not because it is the safest option, because I think Arteta genuinely believes in honouring the framework he has set up within the squad. He told Kepa this was his competition. He has built trust with the players around those kinds of commitments. Changing that for a final in front of the whole squad sends a message about how much those commitments actually mean. And honestly, I do not think the goalkeeper is going to decide this match. I really do not. The debate around it is the most accessible storyline, so it dominates the conversation. But the final will be decided in midfield and at set pieces, not between the posts. Drop your take on this in the comments, because I genuinely think this is the selection call that splits Arsenal supporters most cleanly right now. But this leads directly to a selection debate I find even harder to call. And this one matters more tactically. The striker debate, Gyökeres versus Havertz versus Jesus. This one is genuinely interesting because all three options have specific logic attached to them for this particular match. And I will be honest, this is the selection question I find hardest to call. I was not fully convinced in either direction when I first started thinking through it. Each option tells a different story about how Arsenal want to play Sunday. Gyökeres makes sense because City's defensive line on Sunday is weakened. Physical presence, aerial threat, running channels against a backline missing Gvardiol and Thierry. Gyökeres could cause real problems in the spaces. He is direct, he is powerful, and he would stretch City in ways that create room for Saka and Eze. Some of you will be strongly in this camp, and I think the logic is sound. The Havertz false nine argument is tactically the most sophisticated. When Havertz drops deep, he pulls a City centre-back with him and creates midfield overloads. Arsenal have won some of their most important recent matches using this shape because it gives them numerical superiority in the areas they want to dominate. Against a Rodri-anchored City midfield, forcing City to make decisions about whether to follow Havertz or hold position is exactly the kind of problem Arsenal want to create. Jesus brings pace and one-on-one quality. He can exploit transitions and is underrated in big games against elite opposition. The counter-argument is that City's defensive pace, even without Guardiola, is still capable of dealing with direct runners. If I am honest with you, I lean Havertz, not because he is the most exciting option, but because the way Arsenal want to control this match through midfield dominance and patient possession is better served by a striker who contributes to that system rather than one who just waits for the ball. Havertz in the false nine has made Arsenal harder to defend against elite teams. Sunday is an elite game. That is my reasoning. But I know many Arsenal supporters will look at City's defensive weaknesses on Sunday and want Thierry in there to go after them directly. There is a real argument on that side, and the decision Arteta makes here will tell us a great deal about how he is approaching the tactical battle. Now, this leads to the last debate, and this one is bigger than Sunday. This one is about whether history and reputation still mean what we think they mean. Does Guardiola's Carabao Cup record still actually matter? Some of you will say absolutely yes, he has won this thing more than any manager alive. He has delivered cup finals under pressure consistently throughout his time at City. His record in knockout football is extraordinary, and a one-off final is exactly the environment where experience and tactical intelligence can override form. Others will say that record was built with a different squad. The City that won League Cups repeatedly had Kevin De Bruyne at his peak, had Fernandinho controlling games, had a defensive structure that was the most organised in Europe. This City, with Guardiola injured, with Gueye Cup tied, with 1 win in 5, is not that City. The record belongs to a version of City that no longer fully exists. I think the honest answer is somewhere in between. Guardiola's knowledge of big finals is real and I would not dismiss it. But knowledge does not replace personnel. You cannot tactically manage your way around not having your best defensive players on the pitch. Guardiola is brilliant, but he will be working with a limited defensive hand on Sunday. And that matters against an Arsenal side that is elite at set pieces. And this is where everything we have discussed comes together. Right, where do I stand? Because you came here for an honest opinion, and I am going to give you one. I think Arsenal win this final, and I want to explain clearly why, not with emotion, with the actual reasons built from everything we have worked through today. The form gap is real. 14 games unbeaten against City's 1 win in 5. That is not a small difference. That is a significant momentum difference going into a one-off match. The set-piece weapon is uniquely dangerous against this specific City defensive setup. 16 corner goals in a season, Declan Rice delivering into a City backline, missing Guardiola and Gueye. That combination creates a genuine path to goals that City will struggle to neutralise. And I promised at the start that this detail would change how you see the match. That is why the recent head-to-head pattern is grounded in tactical reality. Arsenal have not just been getting results against City, they have been outplaying them structurally. That does not disappear in a Wembley final. And the squad mentality is different. This is not the Arsenal that freezes in big moments. The Leverkusen second leg told me everything I needed to know about where this team's head is at. They know how to handle big occasions now. That matters more than people are giving it credit for. And I think as Arsenal supporters who have watched this squad grow across multiple seasons, we can feel that difference even if it is difficult to put precise numbers on it. The risk for me is entirely around Odegaard. If he does not start, and we do not know yet, Arsenal's rhythm in how they build and trigger the press is affected. Not destroyed, but affected. And in a match this tight, small disruptions to rhythm can create the moments City need. So what does that actually tell us? It tells us that the Odegaard fitness news between now and Sunday is the one piece of information that would most meaningfully change how I see this final. Everything else stays largely constant. That one variable is genuinely open. My prediction, Arsenal 2, Manchester City 1. I think it is a tight, intense match. I think City score because they have Haaland and Bernardo and Rodri and they always have a path to a goal. But I think Arsenal have more than one route to scoring against this defensive setup. And the set-piece threat combined with individual quality from Eze or Saka sees Arsenal over the line. But there is a bigger picture here that I want to address before we finish. And I think this is the part of the conversation that matters most in the long run. Now let us talk about the bigger picture for a moment. Because this final is not just about a trophy, it genuinely is not. And I think this is where many of the wider conversations are falling slightly short. If Arsenal win on Sunday, it is the first Carabao Cup title since 1993. It is Arteta's second major trophy. It is the first trophy won in front of a full crowd under this manager. But beyond the numbers and the facts, it starts building something. It starts turning this Arsenal squad from a group that is capable of winning into a group that has won. And that psychological shift, once it happens, tends to accelerate. Teams that have won before find it easier to win again. That is not motivational language. It is a pattern in football history. And as supporters who have watched this squad get close without getting over the line, we understand better than anyone what that shift would mean. Think about the players in that dressing room who have never won a major trophy with this club. Saliba, Havertz, Zubimendi, Gyökeres, Rice, Eze, every single one of those players has come to Arsenal as part of a project. Sunday is the project delivering, and I think many of us who have followed this team closely this season can feel that something is ready to arrive. And then there is the Premier League title conversation to be 9 points clear with 8 games remaining. Mathematically, City cannot close that gap without Arsenal dropping multiple points. But football does not operate purely on mathematics, and I think we all know that. We have seen leads evaporate before. A City win on Sunday changes the energy of the title race in ways that numbers cannot fully capture. They go into the run-in with belief restored. Arsenal go into it with a question mark about whether they can handle the pressure. An Arsenal win does the opposite. It does not clinch the title, but it tells City that this Arsenal is not going to hand anything back. It tells the rest of the Premier League that this is a team that wins when it needs to. And privately, in that Arsenal dressing room, it confirms what Arteta has been building toward for 4 years. The Guardiola situation is also significant for what comes next. Reports this week suggest he will use the international break after Sunday to decide whether he honours the final year of his contract through 2027 or walks away this summer. City are already understood to be preparing for that possibility. If Sunday is a defeat for City and if Guardiola steps away, the dynamic of this rivalry changes completely in Arsenal's favour over the next 2 or 3 years. That conversation will be fascinating to have on Sunday night. And beyond City, Arsenal have a Champions League quarter-final coming. A squad that has just won a trophy going into a European quarter-final is a different prospect than a squad still searching for their first silverware. The confidence that comes from winning, from having done it, that carries into the biggest stages. So let me leave you with this. When I think about where this Arsenal club has been over the last 6 years, the hope of 2022 to 23 collapsing in the final weeks, the 2023 to 24 season where they fought until the last day and still could not get over the line, the constant narrative that Arteta was brilliant but could not win the big moment. When I think about all of that, Sunday feels genuinely different to me. And I do not think I am alone in feeling that as an Arsenal supporter. I think many of us are approaching this weekend with a kind of belief that we have earned through watching this squad prove itself repeatedly. This is not a team that has got lucky to reach a final. This is the team top of the Premier League by 9 points through to the Champions League quarter-finals on a 14-game unbeaten run, with a set-piece weapon that is uniquely dangerous against a City side that is missing key defensive players. That is not a fairy tale. That is a football reality. But here is the honest question I want to leave you with, because I have been turning it over all week and I think it is the right one for every Arsenal supporter to sit with before Sunday. After everything we have been through, the near misses, the disappointments, the moments where it felt like our time and then it was not, do you actually believe this team wins finals now? Or are we still waiting to find out? Thus, because my answer for the first time in a long time is that I genuinely believe it. Not with blind hope, with evidence, with form, with a squad that has shown me repeatedly this season that they know how to handle the biggest stages. Sunday, we find out if the belief was right. I am genuinely curious where you stand on this one, particularly the striker debate, and whether you think Odegaard's fitness actually changes Arsenal's chances significantly if he is not available. Drop your thoughts in the comments because I think that is the conversation worth having before Sunday. If you have not subscribed yet, join us. We will be back Sunday night with the full match reaction, whatever happens. And trust me, you want to be part of that conversation. Come on, Arsenal. Let us make Sunday the one we have been waiting for.